2025. What's your first reaction thinking about 2025?
David, do you want to start us out on 2025?
Yeah, I'll do the old cliche of like, I can't believe how fast it went by. But it's true. Like when I look back on it and think about all the things that have happened in 2025, there's been a lot, but it does just seem like we were going into 2025 planning for the year, and yeah, we're running out of year.
It was the year of the doomsday clock for me. I think I gave that presentation 12 times, maybe, at different regional events, conferences. Really became quite fine-tuned on that one, but enjoyed traveling around the country, talking to a lot of different organizations, companies. We got invited by a few clients to give that presentation directly to their leadership team. So it was a good year for presentations, and enjoyed meeting some people and talking about how to do effective risk communication using the doomsday clock as the analogy.
I think that was very interesting to see how people reacted on what it means to talk to the executives. I think it also talked on the entire business climate, on how important it is to communicate and record to the executives and to the board very quickly. From also just the lower level management to the executive, all have very specific reporting requirements and needed to hear the message crisp and clear.
Couple other themes that I saw from our implementation side was a lot of organizations putting a bigger focus around third-party risk management. Seemed to be a big emphasis this year, as well as business continuity disaster recovery. And I felt like a lot of my year was talking about those two topics, implementing technology solutions to support it, enabling those programs.
What do you think drove that? Like,
I would try to figure that out, because like in 2020, post 2020, we had a big drive towards enterprise risk management after COVID. And something over the last couple of years has been third-party risk management. The new one this year was business continuity. I think I had 5 or 6 different business continuity disaster recovery projects where people were moving to new systems, modifying their processes, trying to increase their maturity around it. And oftentimes what we found was just a need to enhance how they ran their program, to provide more actionable insights around what would, when things occur, running those scenarios and beginning to quickly activate those plans.
Well, I would say that it's in line with the larger environment, with the larger technology environment. If you think about it, we saw quite a few outages for very reliable, heavy hitter third parties. You know, AWS has been down, Azure has had problems, even Google, you know, like the big ones, the big 3 there. I think we've all seen outages that have happened. And I was just listening to someone talking about AI. I mean, we've got, obviously, that's another thing we got to touch on in 2025, is just the changing technology environment. It feels like everything's accelerating, right? We know like technology has moved quickly, but it really feels like this is the year of technology change acceleration. The guy was talking about how with AI now, you can take a CVE, like a vulnerability that's posted, a found known vulnerability, and AI will write the code to exploit it, you know? So, I mean, I don't know if that is correlated to the outages that we've seen, but I mean, you're going to start to see, you know, changes and things being impacted. So it makes sense that places put in a bigger emphasis on continuity.
I think it starts to speak to a risk and business challenge that we've seen this year. This year talks a lot about business disruption, a business uncertainty. There are so many things that changed in the business climate. And what we've seen with a number of our clients, there is a big uncertainty in a personal and in a business and in a workplace environment. That speaks to how do we make sure our business can continue? How do we make sure the people we're doing business with can continue? And that, I believe, speaks to, Andrew, what you talked about, third party and business resiliency. What we've also seen, if we talk about those three aspects, the business uncertainty, third party, and business resiliency, I believe it triangulates into how do I manage and get a more stable business environment? And what are the things that I need to do to get a more stable business environment? Third party used to be just on cyber and maybe privacy. Now it starts talking about everything in between, from operational to compliance to cyber to privacy. That touches on my business resiliency. That becomes a much wider definition than the traditional old disaster recovery plan, to looking at my business and how do I make sure my business is in a stable place. If there is a supply chain disruption, if there is a change in tariffs, how do I manage this and create still a stable business environment for my shareholders? And that filters down to everything in business, from managing my IT environment to managing my compliance environment, to even look forward on what are the compliance obligations that's coming.
I think on the AI side, some of the trends that I've seen, particularly in the broader GRC space, 2025 was a year where many of the vendors started rolling out their first initiatives around how AI can be leveraged directly inside their platforms, as well as from what I'm noticing in the business when it comes to risk and compliance is more and more organizations are beginning to move away from this fear-based approach to AI to looking for adoption, beginning to implement some use cases, oftentimes starting with Copilot and developing some use cases around there. And then there's been a trend for organizations starting to look for pre-built models, pre-built solutions to really enhance their programs around risk, compliance, third-party, business continuity, whatever it might be in the GRC space. But I think when we go into 2026, we're going to see even a further drive and new solutions coming into the market that could be quite the disruptors around what we can do from an AI perspective and to automate some processes that have traditionally been highly manual.
I believe what you've said, Andrew, on the disruptors, it's going to be accelerating the disruption in the business world, in our lives, on what we see in AI. I've listened to a podcast earlier this week. I believe they said OpenAI came up with a new enhancement every 3 days this year. And
I mean, we're seeing appetite at clients for AI workflow automation. So if you think about it, there were a couple things you mentioned in the beginning, Yanni. And one of the things that you mentioned was uncertainty. And it seems like places are trying to get their arms around uncertainty by some of the themes that we've talked about. So one, third party, business continuity, making sure that they have a stable business environment. Two, efficiency, driving automation with AI to try and build as an efficient program as they can have. And I wonder if like all of these currents are somewhat correlated and kind of driving each other. I mean, I will say one thing I've seen this year is a bigger appetite for managed services, especially from small and medium-sized businesses. And I think that probably comes out of a drive for efficiency and probably has benefited from this wave of wanting to drive efficiency, in addition to looking at how to supplement your team, right? How to do it with automated tools, with AI, and in what other ways can you do it?
I think one other theme that stands out to me in 2025 was at the beginning of the year, there was quite the concern around the economy, changing politics, introduction of tariffs. We saw a lot of organizations being more conservative with how they operated, with decisions they're making. And as the year went on, beginning to loosen up a little bit and beginning to take some additional strategic risks on decisions they were making and moves they were willing to do. So I think as I look at 2025 holistically, that was a big theme that came out, was somewhere around mid-year, that turn, or that steady turn away from being very conservative, being very worried about where the economy is going, to feeling a little bit more confident, maybe not fully confident in all their decisions or knowing exactly what was going to happen, but less uncertainty as the year progressed.
Do you think it's less uncertainty, or is it people are getting used to uncertainty and introducing processes to manage it?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I do think the uncertainty level decreased as the year went on. Right away, you had the Trump administration talking massive tariffs. As the year went on, things began to level out, where there's still room for anything to happen, but it wasn't quite to the extent of everyone was going to have a tariff, every country, every product. It became a little bit more clear as the year progressed. So I do think there was a decline in that level of fear that people had as they got their arms around it.
I wonder if that drove the interest in risk that I thought we saw this year. A lot of clients that historically have been compliance focused started talking to us and asking us to help them with risk and risk management this year. And I wonder if that didn't have something to do with it.
I think it absolutely does. And I think you touch on a very important factor. Is there is a big move that we see in the industry, moving away from pure compliance to risk management. I believe it's because there's so many different moving parts in running a business and trying to get ahead of it. And I'll use supply chain disruptions as one of the big things. If I look at when we talk to boards, supply chain disruptions, culture, return to office, third-party risk management, and that's not necessarily in order of importance, but those are things that we've heard. And I think that is managing risk, and how do you get ahead of those?
Yeah, I've seen that as a broader trend in the industry as well. I just saw something where the CIS is pushing a move from their old risk assessment methodology, which is common when you see one-off assessments that are occurring, to get a point in time understanding of what your risk and compliance and control environment is. And they're moving to a more true risk management process.
David, what's your biggest takeaway for 2025?
If I had to put it in a word, it would be acceleration of change. I think 2025 was probably a year of trying to get everything in order to deal with the acceleration and changes that we're going to be seeing into 2026. And places you're starting to feel it. I think individuals are starting to feel it. And that obviously rolls up to the business level as well. Which tells me that I think we're going to see a very interesting 2026. What about you all?
I would agree. When I look at 2025, I see organizations taking strides to be ready for future AI and automation. They're already taking steps to reduce workforce. There's been pushes for individuals to return to office. So there's been a lot of disruption to employees. And going into 2026, I don't see that decreasing. I think it's only going to increase further. And so there's going to be a bigger and bigger focus on organizations driving efficiency, and being able to do more faster is really going to be that theme that we started talking about. I think 2024, we're starting to see that play out. And I think that's just going to continue as we step into the new year, into 2026, 2027.
I like what you both said, disruption and change. I really think that is what summarized 2025. So if we start thinking about how does that change to 2026? So let's pull our crystal balls out.
Andrew, when you were talking about what happened to the workforce, I think you saw it broadly in 2025 with a reduction in hiring, especially at the entry level. And I wonder what that is going to have as far as long-term ramifications. when it comes to knowledge transfer, when it comes to all the things that you think about of growing the young workforce that will become the old workforce, it seems like there is a push to replace that with automation, trying to drive efficiency, like you said, trying to get more done faster with less. I think that you'll start to see you see green shoots right now in 2025 from the
Mhm.
seeds that have been planted to do that. And I think you'll actually start to see those things come to fruition in 2026. I think a lot of times in our industry, it's such a niche area of business. Sometimes we feel a little bit insulated from both the broader macro environment, the economy in general, and from the larger business impacts that you see. But I think things are moving and changing so quickly that in 2025, it started to feel like that wall was getting broken down. And we kind of want that wall to be broken down because we always talk about not working in silos, collaborating with the broader business as a goal that we want the clients that we work with to do. And I think it's happening more and more um, out of necessity because as things are accelerating, as things are changing, the business is having to change in a way that it's impacting everyone. You're starting to see impacts. We talked about impacts to individuals, those impacts rolling up to the business. I think it's pervasive. The changes that we're seeing are pervasive. And I think in 2026, you're going to start to see the fruition of the seeds that were planted in 2025. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I'm really interested to see what we'll be saying at the end of 2026. How about conferences this year, guys?
I did go to quite a few conferences, a lot of just regional events, which were great ways because you get little, like almost micro conferences, half-day events where you get to do the presentation, but also listen to other experts in the field and see what they are hearing, what they're talking about. And it really ranged from cybersecurity to third-party risk management to technology vendors providing their insights, but also gave me a chance to talk with a lot of risk and compliance and IT professionals of what's going on in their business, what is happening. So a lot of, I think, what you're hearing us talk about today, I'm hearing echoing from conversations I've had from all these various events. And I think this year I did east to west coast, north to south. So hit large parts of the country on those events.
For us, the conferences that I went to, it felt like a maturation of the past 3+ years that we've been putting into establishing our presence at these conferences. The conversations that we've had at the conferences seem to be of better quality.
I think the conferences gave us a good insight into how people are changing. If I think about attending the conferences 3 years ago when ChatGPT or OpenAI came out, it was an incredible amount of fear that I heard from risk practitioners to now a very cautious, we need to do this. And the challenge would be, if I look back and forward, 2025 is, oh dear, we need to do something about this AI thing. To 2026 is going to be, let's do something.
You remember when ChatGPT first came out, 2022, 2023, there were surveys amongst the GRC professionals, and like 80% said we would never use AI for our work. And now I feel like that number's got to be completely flipped, where people are actively using it in some form or fashion. They're encouraged to use approved channels, approved solutions, and I think that's what I find have been fascinating about this. We saw it coming. Is like, if you're saying no now, just give it time. The technology is going to evolve. The need is going to evolve.
Yeah, I think in 2023 and 2024, the conversation centered around the deficiencies and skepticism, right? At all the conferences, you go into someone talking about that, and they'd start talking about hallucinations. They'd start talking about data privacy issues, problems, and obviously in our industry where everyone is really conservative and risk averse, the focus seemed to be about what do we do to get our arms around this and ring fence it and slow it down and assess it, right? Like what you saw as far as technology vendors coming out with stuff, it was like AI assessment modules to try and assess what your organization is doing from a compliance perspective with AI. I think 2025 turned a corner because in 2025, the tools that everyone uses started to get AI functionality integrated with them. So now the tools that folks are comfortable with using every day have that functionality, and the people in our industry started actually using it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that changes things, right? Whenever you actually start to use something on a daily basis, you build some comfort with it. When you start to see results from it, you get a little bit of trust. And there was an inflection point at one of the conferences that we were at. And I was sitting next to Yanni, and I actually elbowed him when the guy said it, because it was the most valuable comment I had heard on AI from people speaking about it. There was a panel, and many in the panel were echoing the things that we had heard in 23 and 24. But one of them, who was working with AI with businesses on a daily basis, said that he was at a business and the conversation was around, what is AI going to do to disrupt your business? Like, that's the conversation that we need to be talking about. And he specifically referenced the business model of the client that he was talking with, which is one that is being drastically impacted by AI right now. And he said, we can talk about all these nuances and things like that, but really, what about the big picture? What about the way that this is impacting your business and your business model today? And that's only going to get exacerbated as we go into the future. And he made the comment that that's where this conversation should be. And I was like, yeah, I absolutely agree.
I do not believe there is a single business, from delivering widgets, manufacturing widgets, to maintaining widgets, to delivering services, that will not be impacted by AI in some form or fashion. As risk practitioners, we kind of lived in denial for the last 3 years. And to your point, we have now turned that corner and realized we need to do something about it. And I think 2026 is going to be, in the risk world, is going to be, okay, now let's do something about it. There's going to be a lot of, let's build a program. We talked the past year about AI governance. Now it's going to be transitioning into, what are we as risk practitioners doing to utilize AI? It's going to be a big change for risk practitioners.
And I think that's something that I'm proud of Cential and this team, that I think we recognized it early enough that we needed to invest in the team to become fluent in AI and understand how to leverage it and encourage education, training, and utilization of tools around it. I feel like we're ahead of the curve on leveraging AI in the risk management, compliance management function, and how to do that effectively, and going beyond just simple prompting, but building models, building flows. I think we're kind of leading some of the conversations when it comes to risk management AI, compliance AI.
We were just talking about other businesses being impacted, and I think consulting itself is being impacted. And what I'll say about your comments, Andrew, are that, yeah, I do feel like we've taken that seriously from the beginning and moved in order to try and stay on the front edge of it, so that we can adapt as it inevitably does change the business that we're in. I think, going down that theme, when you listen to all the podcasts, when you listen to the leading AI pundits talk about the things that are happening with AI, they're always talking about the biggest problems in the world that AI is starting to solve, right? So it has solved math problems that people have been working on for decades. It's starting to solve big problems in physics. They're starting to do drug discovery with it, all these important things for longevity. Like, the world's biggest problems are really starting to apply AI to the world's biggest problems and starting to actually make some headway in those spaces. And I think you're starting to see it work down to what we do in GRC. You can always, we've been doing this for a long time. Like we just celebrated our 10-year this year, and we'll talk more about that later, but we've been doing this for a while. And I think we have a pretty good handle on what the common problems are in GRC, like what the big things that everyone's trying to achieve, right? So one of them is, how do we always keep our list of compliance and compliance requirements up to date and make sure that our internal controls are matched up with them? And now you've seen several vendors come out in the space with solutions to try and do exactly that, because it is a very, very hour-intensive, time-intensive, resource-intensive task to stay up to date on that. The other thing that I think is a big one that you're starting to hear more and more about is continuous controls monitoring. And the idea, that's been a holy grail that places have been working on ever since I've been in GRC. That's been a term, and there have been organizations that we've talked to that's been their entire mission. And the way they were trying to achieve that in the past was so daunting and it seemed somewhat futile to try and keep up with every technology platform and the changes that are being made to every technology platform, and somehow be able to collect all of the data that every platform in an organization is generating in order to have risk data and understand the state of your controls against that data. And now you're able to do it in a different way. You're able to bring AI into the picture. And so you're starting to see different approaches to it. And I think if it's not in 2026, I think in the next couple of years, you're going to start to see solutions to some of the big problems that that haven't been solved in our space.
I think, David, you're hitting on a very important aspect. It is touching every aspect of business, from the big problems, but also the day-to-day tasks, where the introduction of agents, and if you look at the past year in terms of AI, agents became the big thing. And it's agents in so many different levels, and I maybe sound like a broken record, but we're only starting to see the beginning of that. It's going to rapidly mature and change on what agents can do and how it's going to be utilized. And it will impact the knowledge worker significantly. It is, and that starts speaking to, if we look forward on business and where business is going, the disruption in business and our recruiting practices, our education practices, our training practices are going to look different. I don't need a newly grad to come in and do repetitive task. I've got an agent doing that. I need an educated person coming in with a lot more experience. Does that mean in the future we probably need to have people with a master's degree? Don't know if that's the answer, but the answer is there needs to be a change on how people are educated entering the workforce. Otherwise, people are going to struggle.
Yeah, I've heard several times in 2025, I've heard over and over again that we're on the verge of a one-person unicorn, right? A one-person billion-dollar revenue business. And they're saying we're probably going to see that in the next 12 to 18 months. And if you think about what that parallel is for our business and our clients, I think what that parallel is that you're going to start to see advanced capabilities trickle down to entities that would not have had them. Things that were restricted to the largest financial institutions, the ability to track, thousands and thousands of regulatory sources, many, many controls, the idea of continuous controls monitoring, the idea of vetting all third parties ahead of time and having real-time updates on your third-party risk environment. Those things that were only available to the largest entities that were willing to spend on the people resources in risk management and compliance are going to start to trickle down to medium and small size businesses, because they'll be able to do it with many fewer resources.
I think the biggest prediction, if I'm looking at 2026, is, David, Yanni, you both said this already, is the more change, more growth in the AI space, and it's gonna continue to be consistently evolving. And so that's, if there's one constant that we're going to experience in 2026, is that the GRC landscape will keep changing.
Building on what David said, on continuous monitoring, on continuous evolving, risk has traditionally been a historic view. We are doing the transition from historic viewing, historically looking at risk, to current and forward looking. We can do that with the help of AI, with the help of processing large volumes of data right away. So it becomes more forward looking. And if you look at an organization, you know what happened. You are concerned about what could happen and what is going to happen. With the amount of data, with the ability to correlate and triangulate events and understanding the impact of that on my business is going to change. And I believe we as Cential that's really what we're driving at when we're working with our clients.
Yeah, I wonder, I'll piggyback on that, right? So if you think about risk management and risk scoring and the things that you do through the risk management process, there's an element of predictive modeling in there. You're trying to make sure that you're covering the bases against what you think is going to happen in the future. That has been held back in the past by the fact that you're looking at historical data, and because it's hard to scale some of the risk quantification techniques that you're performing. I wonder if this won't be an area, and if it's not in 2026 or maybe 2027, where predictive modeling with AI will become so good that it will impact every area of the business, not just GRC and not just risk management, but in doing so, it will enable risk management at a level that we hadn't been able to do before.
I wholeheartedly believe that will be the case.
Another thing that I think, if I had to predict something that could happen in 2026, is if you'll recall, in the beginning, utilizing AI, it took a lot of prompting and pulling what you wanted out of it, right? It was a natural evolution from the old days of using Google search, getting back tens or hundreds of pages of results and having to sift through it yourself, to asking AI a question and it doing that step for you. But then you would really have to work with it and pull it along to say, no, I don't care about this. I want this. Prompts were paragraphs long. And now you're starting to see agents where they're starting to be able to do more of that. And they're starting to understand a little bit of the nuance and what your intent is with your questioning. And you're having agents that you're being able to give tasks, right? And so I'd say 2025 was the year where an agent could be given a task and a workflow, and it could complete one task with a series of subtasks as defined in a workflow. And I think in 2026 or 2027 is going to be the year where you can give it a goal, and it will determine the tasks and workflow that are needed to get to that goal and do it on its own. And I think that's going to be a shift in the frame when people are talking about what it can do.
So should we talk 10 years of Cential?
I'll start with probably the newest member of the three of us at Cential. And I cannot be more proud of our team and what we've achieved with Cential. I believe what we've seen and the team that we have, we've got incredible talent in our team. And I'm very proud of what they've achieved. And I'm very excited to see what the team is going to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I will extend on that. And I'll say, I think that pride is based on some real examples that I can talk to. And I feel like in 2025, with the passing of our 10-year, it's become evident that anything that's in our wheelhouse, any project that we get in our wheelhouse, we know that we have the expertise and the team to deliver on. And we feel more confident than ever that we can rise to the challenges that any opportunity brings us. I'd say that's something that I have felt this year in 2025. And if there's anything to be proud of, it's that.
I think after 10 years, it's been great to watch how we've changed, evolved, grown from David, where it was when you and Brian started it, to where it's at now. I also beginning to see the path forward for the next 10 years on where we're going and how far this is going to continue to grow. I'm looking into 2026 and see amazing opportunities for us to continue to build one of the best teams in the GRC space, grow amazing partnerships with other organizations, other vendors, and then just continuously delivering high quality work for our clients to make their jobs better, making their ability to execute that much more efficient, stronger, and giving them stronger programs.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, 10 years went by so fast. And I think about the next 10 years and what that is going to be like. And if I look back at that start and what Cential was at the beginning versus what it is now, and extrapolate that forwards, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say about it. It's just, it's simultaneously exciting, overwhelming. Yeah, I think it's going to be great.